So one of the most uncomfortable things for humans is sitting in a state of actual discomfort. So my question that I'm posing to the group this evening is, can sitting in discomfort actually be healthy? We spend a lot of time trying to avoid being uncomfortable and making sure that we have all of our what we call creature comforts around us, like Snuggies and things for fall. But there is an opportunity for growth when we are in an uncomfortable state. Discomfort doesn't always have to mean that something is wrong. It can mean that we're having an opportunity for something that is new, maybe a challenge that's going to contribute to growth in our life in some way, something different. We tend to really like things staying the same in a lot of ways because we know what to expect, and our brain finds a lot of comfort in knowing what to expect. That's where control issues can come around, and I use that term lightly because I myself have had them and pretend not to have them anymore, but still do sometimes. Um, so those ideas of feeling like we need to control everything that's happening in our life can kind of trickle in when things feel challenging and like we're not able to predict what's going to happen and a little bit uncomfortable. Another part of discomfort that can be healthy is it gives us a reason to pause and to actually question if the way that we have been living and the thoughts and the belief systems that we hold on really tightly to are actually serving us or not. Because just like we like continuity of behavior and expectations to be met, we also like to have our thought paths and our thought patterns go the same way. That's very comfortable to us. But giving ourselves permission to think about things in a new way is another opportunity for growth. Are the thoughts and the behaviors and the beliefs and the ideas that I've been using for the last few decades, are they actually still serving me now? Or is there something about them that is contributing to me feeling stuck and feeling like I'm in this place of discomfort that I don't like, that I want to be over, that I'm trying to avoid, but yet here I sit. Maybe there's something in my mind and in my thinking that needs to change, not in my mind as a cognitive physiological thing, but the way my brain is processing information in those thought processes.
Mm.
And that's a whole new layer of discomfort. We just took something
Yeah.
uncomfortable and then made it about 20 times worse because now we're actually paying attention to what our thoughts are doing and to the things that we have ruminating through our head on a daily basis. Give consideration to the things that are in your head right now. When you lay down in bed tonight, for a moment, you don't have to share with the group right now, but just for yourself, take a second to think about what's going to come to mind when the world is quiet, the lights are off, the news is off, social media is off, and it's just you in the darkness. What's going to come to mind for you? Those fears, regrets, ideas, questions, discomforts, belief systems, reflections on what other people may have said or done throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout your life, depending on how far back some of those thoughts go sometimes. The things that come to mind when we're laying in bed at night and the rest of the world is kind of shut off, that's what's in our default mode network. Those are the things that we've been pushing to the side and trying to avoid all day long. But if we give consideration to what some of those things are, then we have an opportunity to choose to think differently about them and to do something different with them. So sitting in a state of discomfort can actually be an opportunity for significant growth and change and a redetermination of what you really want for your life. We all have various goals, plans, things that we want. Maybe what we want is more peace, more contentment, more financial consistency, healthier relationships. all sorts of things that can sit in those wants. But how much of what we're doing on a daily basis is taking us toward that direction, and how much of us is holding us in a place of discomfort and irritation and frustration, but actually just staying stuck. So my question to open up conversation tonight is along these lines. Reflecting on some of these things that I've brought up, can sitting in discomfort actually be something you're okay with and willing to do? And if so, where do you think that might take you? Or if you've already been experiencing that a little bit, if you want to share some of what discomfort has brought you to where you're at tonight. Everybody's in a real strong state of discomfort now,
I,
huh?
I guess I'll go.
Yeah, go
So
ahead, Kyle.
I sorry I had troubles finding the link on the website after it starts. I think it goes away. Uh,
Okay.
so I had to find it on Facebook. But I guess the state of discomfort. I used to use alcohol as a crutch. So like for me, I'm working towards, staying away from that. Um, Sitting in a state of discomfort for me, like avoiding the hard conversations that need to be had. Uh, I used to just be pretty passive in that, but I would be quick to like anger because rather than having those discussions, I guess they would just build and 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 build internally. Where like if I could have just had the discomfort and acknowledged it, yeah, it's super uncomfortable for sure. But you have to acknowledge it. You have to process the event. Or I have to process the event. I'm not speaking towards anyone, but I feel like in those areas of discomfort, there is an epiphany, I guess you can have like, and I have to find it in a clear state of mind, not high on, pot or not drunk or, like a clear state of mind. It's difficult because I fight with myself. Um, and it's not comfortable at all. It's extremely yeah, I have like a pit in my stomach, talking to myself. Uh, and I think that's where I just would not want to have those conversations or like drink because like that inner voice kind of goes away and I'm at peace, but it's not real. It's very temporary. And the next day the anxiety is almost worse, right? Um, so for me, I've been just really focusing on having that feeling in my stomach or whatever, anxiety, panic, whatever, and working through it and journaling and it's weird. I don't like it. I hate being in a state of discomfort. But in order for me to like grow who I was and how I was before, like was not attainable for long-term health. So I have to work through the discomfort to reinvent me as an individual for a healthier me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that,
Mm,
Kyle.
sure.
And I know you have not been microdosing for a super long extended period of time, but as you've gotten started, how do you mind sharing with the group a little bit about what you've noticed with that inner dialogue quieting down a little bit, or how that's been helpful to you thus far?
Yeah, I just wrote week one notes downstairs actually before this, like the summary of week one. And for me, I have noticed my mood get a little bit better, but I have also the same time I started this program is like the same time I stopped drinking. So it's hard to attribute it to fully microdosing, but I have been able to open up with individuals randomly and talk through my experiences where I've where normally I would have thought that it would have been weak of me to discuss those things. I have a little bit more clarity or just confidence and to talk through those things, which has always been very difficult for me. And for some reason, I had a really terrible day on Sunday. Like day 7 was just catastrophic, but I didn't drink and like I just worked through it. And I'm gonna have bad days, right? Like it is what it is. And my mood is, I think, increased. My creativity has stayed the same. My energy level has slightly gone up. My motivation has gone down. But as we kind of previously discussed, I think that's what my body really needed was for my motivation to go down. I needed to be comfortable with just silence and sitting with myself. My anger, depending upon the day, it was actually really good for the first 7 days. And then I kind of, for the day 8 and day 9, I just stopped like the journaling, stopped like the positive affirmations, went kind of back to my old habits of like not focusing on myself, no self-care, like no drinking, but kind of consciously making it an effort to be more self-aware. And I, for yesterday and today, I didn't do those. And I've actually today noticed my frustration levels higher, because I consciously stopped working towards that inner growth. So like positive affirmations, journaling, like working towards, I think it's for me, I really have to focus on, I have to make a conscious effort on writing those things down and like making a to do a positive intention to do list and like writing it down how I'm going to love myself today,
Mhm.
which is weird as hell to say for me. But overall, I think the experience has been positive. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty in that. I mean, it is incredibly helpful to hear you be just so authentic and sharing what's going on with you and what you're noticing. And that reminder too that, just starting microdosing is a part of the journey. It's a part of what helps the brain to quiet down and to think about things a little bit differently. And for some people, you mentioned motivation. For some people, it's increasing motivation that are having a hard time with that. For others that feel like motivation is what is more of a driving force, letting that quiet down a little bit can be really helpful, but there is other work that goes along with it. We don't just microdose mushrooms and we're like, utopia, everything's healed and fixed. No, that's a piece of it. That's a piece of allowing us to actually move to sit in the discomfort of things and not try and avoid them so much and be okay with that discomfort. So there is really a reconnection, that week 1 chapter is about learning to trust your natural self. And there is a reconnection back to when you are okay with sitting with yourself, even when it's uncomfortable and things around you seem really uncomfortable, that's strength. That's growth. That's an acceptance of reality and truth and honesty that you can move forward from. And
Mhm.
by you, I mean all of us. Not a pointed statement.
Yeah, it's difficult because men in general, I think, or at least my society growing up is like it's kind of a weakness, right? To talk about your feelings or like, all this stuff. So for me, it's almost like I have to re start a new chapter in my life as a new individual and like be weak or whatever it's called,
Yep.
and it's difficult. It takes real work and it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you sharing it with all of us.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much for sharing that.
Yeah.
What
Well,
is,
I have,
go ahead, Valerie. Mhm.
okay, sorry. I have a question. I'm wondering, what do people do when they're just sitting with their thoughts? If you what comes to mind is classrooms, boring work meetings, maybe sometimes church, um, you know, um, jury duty, like if you're just sitting around waiting, DMV, what do you do? If you don't have your phone, or say you don't want to look at your phone, I think there's, you can watch people and things like that. And um, But what do you do when you're just when there is no activity? Do people I've noticed a lot of people might have like restless leg syndrome and they'll bounce their legs or they'll I used to play with my hair. I mean, that was one of my biggest things. I remember in high school, I didn't have cell phones to keep me occupied. So I was like, what did I do? Like, to pass the time. What would I do to practice patience and um, sitting in the moment, kind of just not needing to do something all the time, not needing to be busy. And I would, I'm just thinking to myself, oh yeah, I used to split my split ends. I would look at my split ends and then split them all day. That's kind of how I would occupy myself. But I'm wondering what do other people do?
Mhm. Well, I think the question really is, are we using thought as a distraction, or are we using thought to get what we want? So sitting in a high school classroom, every single high schooler wants us to not be in class. So a lot of the thoughts in that, I still have two teenagers at home. So a lot of the thoughts in there are, I wish this class was over. What am I going to do at lunch? What's so and so doing in the other classroom, and how many bathroom passes can I get to get out of this particular class? But when we're in our adult lives and have time, like sitting at the DMV or
Yeah.
sitting in church, depending on why or why not you may be there. Those are opportunities when you have those quiet downtimes. That's when that default mode network again becomes very active. Default mode network is supposed to be active when executive functioning is not active. So we should either be in default mode functioning or executive mode functioning. And so if we're not in executive mode functioning, meaning where we're focused on a project or a sermon or a teaching or something, a work project or something that's going on, then that default mode network is very active during that time. Well, what is in default mode network? It's all of our previously held belief systems. It's our ideas. It's our understanding of the world. It's our shoulda, coulda, wouldas of the past and the fears about the future and the things that, we give meaning to that have happened that somehow impact us and define something about us. So if we take that time instead and say, I'm not going to sit here and let the world holler into this empty cave of my brain and let things just bounce around randomly and, take whatever gets tossed in here. I'm going to put some attention towards the things that I'm thinking about. What do I want for my life? I'm going to sit here and think, okay, I've got this particular thing I'm working through in my life. How have I been thinking about this? Is there a way to think about this differently? What if it's possible, just considering that this other person that really hurt me did that out of something that had only something to do with them and nothing to actually do with me? How would that change the way that I'm responding to myself or to other people around me?
I have a question in regards to like that because it's very easy to say that, but it's very hard to do that.
Mhm.
So like, you know, Valerie, sorry to interrupt, your conversation, but I'm just, piggybacking on your response, Charity, in regards to like those thought processes that should exist in the default mode network. But to get there when your mind is not there is a goal. Um, so like mindfulness, whatever, meditation, breathing, like I'd just be interested in everyone's experience and how to get to that peace or that thought process. Um, because I'm interested in the same question that Valerie asked.
So the piece of that that's going to be primary is exactly what we're talking about, which is number one, first awareness, understanding why those things are there and where they've come from. The second aspect is exactly where the mushroom and microdosing comes in to have an impact on that. Because it's like talk therapy. Talk therapy, again, I'm a licensed therapist. You guys know this. We've had conversations about this. Talk therapy is just talking. It is just its own thing that continues to feed more thought and more ideas and more thought and more ideas. And you leave a therapy session like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking exhausted. What are you going to take away from it? There's a whole bunch of talking that happened, maybe some different perspective shifts that were like, yeah, okay, that was interesting. But what ultimately happens? We go back to our default way of thinking. Why? Because that's easy. It's comfortable for the brain. The whole purpose of using psilocybin mushroom is getting that psilocin into the brain, that metabolite, to quiet down the default mode network, all of that default way of thinking, to reduce blood flow to the amygdala so we're not in this hypervigilant fight or flight emotional state of being all the time, which Kyle, kind of to some of the things you're talking about, is where addictive behaviors and coping mechanisms come from. I feel a certain way, it's uncomfortable, I need to shut that off because it's based on how we feel and those physiological responses. To get those serotonin receptors enhanced, getting, more of the benefits in the system of that happy mood neurotransmitter, enhancing digestion, enhancing memory, getting new areas of the brain connecting with each other. When that default mode network quiets down, new areas of the brain can talk to each other. Same with enhancing those 5-HT2A receptors. Stimulating that prefrontal cortex. My executive functioning is now going in a different direction. Again, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like? Because if we just sit around and think, oh, I wish I wasn't drinking, or I wish I wasn't using food as a coping mechanism, or I wish I wasn't so depressed, or I wish I didn't just hate my life. If we just sit around and think about those things, that's what we're keeping in our brain. If we shift that by using mushrooms to allow the brain to physiologically have that shift, then we have more awareness of the thoughts that we are allowing to go through our brain at any given time. So it's not about sitting and having a breathing technique. It's not about spending more time in meditation or more time in prayer or more time in nature. It is about being willing to actually give consideration to what is in your current way of thinking. Why is it there? Where did it come from? And is it serving you? And that's the uncomfortable part, because when we realize something is not serving us, then we have to decide if we're just going to keep on that path or if we're going to do something different. Now, you guys have heard me say, you choose your hard. You either choose the hard of sticking with where you've always been, knowing that it sucks and it's just going to suck because that's how it's always been, or you choose the hard of shifting and going down a new path, knowing that's also going to be hard because it's change and it's uncomfortable, but it's taking you where you want to go. Now, the outcome isn't to be put in a box. It's not like, oh, it's taking me to, this particular dot on a map. Leave some variability with that. Don't put that dot in a box and then say, if I don't get to this dot, all of this wasn't worth it. I didn't really change. I didn't really grow. Let those measurements be flexible, because remember, the dot is set with your current way of thinking. The goal is there because you have your current definitions. Let those definitions become a little bit more fluid. That's where some of that discomfort is. So microdosing is a piece of that because of what it physiologically does to the brain to allow those other things to happen. But we are not trying to sit in a place of empty mind. That is not the goal. We're intelligent creatures. The mind is not meant to be emptied out. It is meant to be quieted so it's not so noisy, so we can choose what we want to do with what's there and then make adjustments accordingly. Thoughts from others that are coming to mind?
I just want to kind of even go along with what Kyle and Valerie are saying too. It's like something about our society, it gives us this guilt for not being busy. Like if we're not productive in every moment of the day, it's like we feel guilty for, being a piece of crap for not doing anything, right? And so going against that, like having an opportunity to sit in that discomfort, alone with our thoughts, sounds like that's kind of like where the magic can happen. Give yourself that opportunity to figure, are my beliefs, serving me? Because now I get a chance to even focus on that. I'm not just staying busy just for staying busy's sake, just to do things. I'm actually able to inwardly look at where my beliefs at. What am I avoiding by staying busy?
Mm.
And yeah, I kind of want to talk about what Kyle was talking about with like the self-love and the journaling, because that's really what I've found when I've sat through this kind of discomfort and giving, that consideration, that inwardly looking, that opportunity for growth. And it's shifted my perspective from like the question of am I okay with, my thoughts? Am I okay with what I've done? Am I okay with where I'm at? Is everything fine? And it shifted to, am I okay with who I am? And that's where I really started to think like, if yeah, I am, but if no, then why not? What needs to change there? And that's where I could find some real growth, is from that shift from like, am I okay with who I am? And yeah, I feel like for the most part I am. But when there's times like, oh, no, then it's another chance to really figure out why not, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
No, that's great, Brian. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, these ideas, all of us experience them in different ways. Some of us we've got a pretty wide age demographic on group tonight. But just because there's an wide age spread doesn't mean that each person has not experienced a lot of these very same things just in different ways. And with that, I like what you said about, am I okay with who I am? Because another way to reference that and kind of think about it is, how do other people experience me? We spend so much time thinking about what is everybody else thinking of me and am I showing up okay and all that. But how do other people experience me? When you leave each of our presence, how have we experienced each other? And are we able to show up in that authentic way to really just be ourselves in that natural state without the idea of, I have to be a certain way so that they're going to think I'm okay, or they're going to think I'm successful, or they're going to think I have it all together, or did I sound intelligent or heartfelt, or whatever we think that someone else is wanting from us, when we instead are just present and authentic and not worried about all of our own insecurities and putting those on the forefront, covering those up. Not only do we show up more calm and peaceful and confident and, all the things that would just allow us to just be a human being, but it gives the other person permission to do that too. And think about people that you're around. Some people that we're around, it's like, oh, okay, I can't wait for this to be over because my cortisol levels go through the roof and it's just really hard because you can tell they're just trying so hard and you're like, you're okay. Just take a breath. But that's them feeling that they have to show up a certain way and hoping you're going to think a certain thing about them. And then there's other people that you're around that you're like, it's just easy because you don't feel like there's a bunch of masks that are being put on.
Hmm.
Those masks take a lot of work, a lot of preparation, a lot of consideration, a lot of follow-up. How did I ask this time? What was it that they responded to? I got to do that next time. Like, it's exhausting. And if we can pause that, I see some of you just taking a big deep breath right now. If we can pause that, like, you know what I'm talking about. Imagine then how other people get to experience that with us. That deeper state of just
Hmm.
authentic, present, here we are all doing life together. And that is not a lackadaisical way of thinking and living that's like, oh, just sit back on the couch and hang out, whatever happens, happens. No, that's not that. It is recognizing that we really don't control a lot of what happens around us. And when we can be okay with recognizing that, and that can be mighty uncomfortable sometimes, doesn't you can look 5 minutes away from yourself and say, yeah, there's some just uncomfortable things happening in today's society that we don't know how they're going to turn out. But guess what? Sitting and worrying about it doesn't change anything. Freaking out and phoning our friends and all of that, putting 1,000 things on social media and going down the dark rabbit holes doesn't change anything. except it gets us a lot more riled up and a lot more angry and frustrated. And then those feelings of, I don't have control and what does this mean for me? All of that just gets built back right back into our default mode network. And we live from that state of fear.
I
But quieting the mind down gives an opportunity for that to shift. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I'm just kind of wondering, like the default mode network, like yeah, it's like I always say this wrong, psychocillin, whatever,
Psilocybin.
psilocybin. There we go. So you'd mentioned that that plays a part in it, and we talked about journaling and self-help or whatever, and kind of just authentically showing up as yourself, and what how that can help and benefit you as an individual. But it is like hard to just sometimes sit in that discomfort, especially if you've ever experienced panic. Um, because sometimes sitting in that discomfort when you've had panic can actually generate to a negative loop very fast.
Mhm.
So, that's where for me, I'm like, not necessarily tools or deep medication, breathing or whatever, but like, how can you assist in your default mode network becoming a better space to exist in? Like, or like, what are some steps? Or I'd be interested in what other people do, or you do, or anyone, like how to, be in a better default mode network just by default and not have to like, I mean, I know it's going to involve a lot of work, but yeah, I'm just interested in that.
Some of it's active, and I'm gonna give a brief response, and then I want to hear what some other people in the group want to offer as well. When we're talking about our default mode network, that is something that is established over an extended period of time. And so, with MRI imaging shows that with the use of psilocybin, the default mode network is quieted down and over time it resets. So if we have an opportunity to reset our default way of thinking and being and perceiving, then what new information are we putting in there and how are we recognizing where our mind tends to go? And most of the time, if we really step back and recognize what we're feeling or what we're experiencing or what we're thinking about when we are in discomfort, it is based in fear, a fear of an unknown outcome or a fear of the possibility of a known outcome that we've had previously, but it is fear based. And oftentimes it's an association to something that has happened in the past. We are fearful of things that we know. We can't fear things we don't know because we literally don't know them. We know that we can be fearful of the idea of a nuclear war. We can fear something that has happened to us personally, like the heartbreak of a relationship or the death of a loved one or something acute or traumatic that has happened in our life, the way we've been treated in the past. We can have fear around that. But that's where the brain will look for a reference point of a feeling to say, hey, this is what we're afraid of, and this is what we're trying to avoid. So when we can look at those fears and say, is this an actual threat to my survival? Or is this an idea that I'm sitting in fear of? That's one of the first places that we can start, Kyle, with that. Okay, what is the fear? That recognition initially, if I'm feeling, especially panic, panic is literally the brain saying, I might die. That's the big difference between what is a panic attack and what's an anxiety attack. And an anxiety attack, by definition, is more of that heightened cortisol, shallow breathing, increased heart rate. What changes that really to a panic attack is the belief within the brain that I might die. That idea of not surviving is the foundational piece of the whole species staying alive. That's where the brain will go. So if we can pause in there and say, is this actually a threat to my survival, or is this just an idea? Then I have a better chance of at least grasping onto something in that moment that gives me a place to stand. So all of those choices and those decisions do take time. I'm going to pause. What comes up for others of you that have been maybe microdosing a little bit longer and have started working through some of these discomforts? Tom, you had leaned forward. Did you want to share? Or you're just leaning forward and now I'm calling you out?
Um, yeah, actually, I was just getting more comfortable, but I appreciate what everybody's been saying, and in this topic. I mean, you're always awesome, Charity, with the what you come with here. I know that for me, if I can, I'd like to share some comments, especially with some of what have been said has spawned my thought process. My discomfort is usually a higher percentage of the time it's me creating the discomfort with the stories or the past belief system, or I'm really artistic in my head of creating a lot of stuff that's not true or going to even be true. And but I go down that path and start believing it. And so, I know that with microdosing for me, and I've cut. I shouldn't say cut back because it's not necessarily even something that I don't have an issue with microdosing. It's just something I haven't been doing for a while. Um, but I do it, and I know that when I do microdose, the belief system it changes. Like everything's different in what I'm believing. I might still start creating like th this outcome of what's going to occur, or um, where I'm at, and the belief of everything that's around me is just it starts going in different directions in I think a more healthy way. Just it expanded, like it expands where I'm at. I'll start maybe creating, well, this outcome might happen, and if that outcome might happen, then this could potentially happen. How real is that? Start putting some healthiness together with the difference in the thought process with cognitive thinking about it, and you know, and versus always going down that same rabbit hole of destruction. It's I'm going to explode. Nothing's going to happen correctly here. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose this or that. This is horrible. The world's ending. That's where I would always go with it. Like in pretty much the same fashion if I'm going down a deep, dark place. Now when I do microdose, it might not go in like the beautiful bright direction, but it will just go in different directions of, well, wow, that's an interesting way to look at that. I never really thought I would think of that. And that's very intriguing. And usually that takes me into another space that's just not even really in an uncomfortable position. It's just more of a intrigued position. Um, and sometimes I've found for myself that it's like, wow, that actually is more realistic than the doom and gloom that I really have always thought was going to for sure occur. Um, so that's my experience with the microdosing and with what some have shared now tonight. I guess another couple of things have come to my mind is that my discomfort is so me. It's not the actual event itself that is discomfort, that's not comfortable. It's me that's making it so uncomfortable. Um, whether it's higher or lower. And I've had some experiences recently, personally, with Becky and my job of actually, and it hasn't been so much with the microdosing, but I've been in a decently healthy states where I've just delved even more into the discomfort, and knowing that it's not known. I don't know. I can't make a story up of how it's going to be. I don't know. I'm going to dive even further and even further into it, whether it's with my job of not going, wanting to go to a certain place, but I'll go and avoid the distraction of the mind creating the story of what is going to happen. Same thing with Becky of we've talked a lot recently about honesty and going there no matter what, because that's what is needed. And so this discussion is getting me excited more and more about doing and we've already talked about microdosing and getting back to it a little bit more regularly and consistently. But I think the past microdosing has actually gotten me here as well, um, because it just opens my curiosity up so much more, and I don't go down the same road. Whether it's panic attack, Kyle, you mentioned, I've been there, and I understand, and the discomfort of that, and just going into places that they're always consistent. It's always the same story, maybe with a little twist to it that I'm going to. And microdosing has actually opened that up to an expansion of just more curiosity and take me into different places with the process, and I and and more areas that I can actually go to and grasp onto or hold on to or even go with. And before I know it, I'm kind of just in a completely different place. So I don't know that I appreciate everyone shares. It's been awesome, great tonight.
Yeah, well, thanks for leaning forward. I'll make sure I just send you a little like thumbs up or thumbs down next time before I call you out. But you're typically pretty open to sharing, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Tom. Definitely.
I want to say one more thing because really want to hear like from other people too. It's really great. But yeah, just quickly, about talking about like the panic or where that fear is coming from. Um, just specifically to that, like there's like grounding techniques, like physical grounding, like touching water, or like the 5 4 3 2 1, like naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste to kind of like bring you back like physically. Because like I think when you're in that panic, it's like fear. It's coming from like stepping out of that default network, if I'm right, out of that like way that your brain has come accustomed to thinking, and understanding, oh man, this maybe isn't the way that it really is. And then it's like stepping out of control, and it's starting to think it's losing control. And then it's almost like you're saying it's like that fear of dying, and it's like maybe like an ego death, or like maybe like a death of that way of thinking. And so like understanding like that's okay, and maybe you're stepping into a wider identity.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brian. That's yes, those things that we can do in the moment to help reorient the brain back around to the present and away from that fear can definitely be helpful. And that's part of what our senses are for. What are the senses sensing? Instead of being so sensual of how do I feel, what are my actual senses? Touching, tasting, hearing, smelling, feel, that those sorts of things. So thank you for that reminder. Absolutely.
It's kind of like get out of your own head and get back into reality.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's just so much easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Kyle, if you want to go back on the website, if you go on the blog page and look at the newsletter from September, the little kind of writing in there for September was about it being all in your head. Everything that's in our head comes from information that's been given to us and definitions that we have, and the way that we're experiencing the world becomes very mechanical. And when we can recognize that we are just having mechanical responses, then we can take away some of the meaning that we give to some of those responses and some of that shame and that idea that, oh, I should have known better, and if only this and if only that, and just realize that we are very mechanical in how we respond because our brain is functioning so quickly off of established reference points that we think we have all of this control and we are just responding by default 90+% of the time. So you might enjoy just reading that because that goes right along with what you're saying. It's really about getting out of your head, realizing it's all in your head, mechanical responses, but then getting out of your own way with that idea of the self-importance and what it means and what it defines and what we want to do with it. And instead, like, what do I want? Where am I going? Why am I allowing this to happen? Why am I giving this other person and the way they've responded so much control over me and how I feel and how the rest of my day is going? That's silly. That's not serving me, but it's costing me a lot because it's costing all my peace for the day and all my emotional contentment and whatever else I was focusing on. So I want to give everyone a chance to talk tonight who wants to. So we have just under 15 minutes left. For any of you that haven't shared yet and would like to jump in, please feel free. But also no pressure. I only called out Tom because I know him.
So for me, and yeah, I think I kind of was starting to do this before microdosing, but microdosing has definitely helped it. I found that I would get, when I'm fearful and discomfort, I get angry. And it's being able to take a step back and say, okay, why are you angry right now? You're not really angry about the kitchen being dirty. You're angry because, oh, you're going to go to the pickleball class today and you're nervous about that and you're not comfortable about that. And that's really what's causing this anger at the kitchen. And being able to identify that anger is being misplaced from something completely different.
Mhm.
And I think the microdosing has helped me be able to focus on that a little bit better. I'm not angry because the laundry hasn't gotten done or something that work hasn't gotten done. It's usually something else that I'm concerned about or fearful about that I'm not trying to think about.
Mhm. Yeah, it's easier to
Um,
put that emotion on something right in front of you than to deal with the reality or the truth, like Tom said, of what's really underneath there.
Correct. And so taking a step back when I realized, why are you so angry over the dishes? And go, oh, that's not what it's not really what I'm upset about. And I'm not really angry. I'm more scared or fearful or concerned and take a step back and, then force myself to think through what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right on, Becky. Thank you for that reminder. Wendy, you had unmuted also.
Um, I love the sharing and the stories that everybody's telling too, and it sounds like I can relate to some of it, and some of it I have. Everybody has their own personal journey, right? I have a lot of pain that I deal with, chronic pain in my body. Some of it's from injury, some of it is a result of that injury and how my body is compensating for it. So about 5 years ago, I did have an injury, and the doctors were freely handing out pain pills. And after about 6 months of taking pain pills, and I wasn't taking a very high dosage of them, but I'm sensitive to things like that, I started to notice how my body was changing and how I would be afraid that, okay, it's going to start hurting. So I'm going to take a pain pill. And that way I can be proactive and beat the pain. But then the pain pills don't work the way they used to, or I would have to take more, or I would forget if I took one, and I got really frustrated. So my first experience with microdosing was to literally help rewire those neurological pathways, because the literal discomfort that I was experiencing physically, I had to relearn how to deal with pain in my body. And I appreciate the journey that I went through then, and I recognize I'm still dealing with chronic pain. I don't want to go back to those doctors. I don't want to talk about what medication they can give me for pain. I would much rather sit with it, recognize where it is. Is it because of this injury? Is it something slightly different? Is it something that, am I trying to get ahead of it with whatever? And I do breath work, and I do Pilates, and I do yoga, and I do these things to try and help bring my body back to a happy place. Sometimes getting there mentally is a struggle for me. So if I can break the pain cycle by microdosing and allow my body to feel a place of happiness again, physically, emotionally, mentally, that's my goal. And that's the journey that I am on right now.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for sharing that. One thing I will add, is I don't know if this was discussed at the time that you got your supplements or your thought box, but has been common with individuals that our practice has worked with for those who have significant physical pain, that microdosing throughout the day in those little small doses more often can be really helpful for moving past some of that pain receptor blockage that's there. I know we had a gal on a couple weeks ago who shared that she had fibromyalgia and she has been able to significantly reduce her pain medicine usage. And over time, because she's been microdosing for over a year now, has reduced her microdosing amount as well. Because that's the other cool thing about psilocybin is over time you need less, not more, but you get to that healing place first of really what your body and what your mind needs. So give yourself permission to kind of consider having some curiosity around that dosing for yourself, and feel free to reach out to the office. We're happy to, provide a little bit of additional guidance or some other ideas along that route. But using a small dose, maybe every 3 to 4 hours, to help maintain that psilocin level within the body a little bit longer, because that half-life is 2 hours and 43 minutes. When we're talking about rewiring the default mode network and some of the mental and psychological things that individuals are working on, there doesn't necessarily need to be those multiple doses. It can. Some people can benefit from dosing a couple times a day. That's completely fine as well. But particularly with the physical response and those pain receptors, consider giving yourself permission to try that and just see how it works for you. And we're here to help assist in any recommendations if needed. So. We have about 5 minutes left tonight. Did anybody else want to add anything to the discussion this evening before we sign off? I really enjoyed hearing everybody's input and so appreciate you sharing what you're noticing and the questions you bring to group in the discussion, because this is enriching discussion because of each of you participating and the things that you come to group with and the things that you're willing to share. So thank you so
It's
much.
just like thanks for the encouragement to like lean into that discomfort. I mean, you could even think about it like the way the body works after in recovery from, working out or doing something active. Like it's like breaking down or discomfort just to like build it up better. It's like a metaphor I think about it. So yeah, it's good to like lean into that discomfort. I heard somebody say, persist what you resist.
Mhm.
So yeah, if it makes you like uncomfortable, just like sit with it. Just sit through it, and it'll be okay.
Absolutely.
Before we go, I just have like kind of some more like logistical kind of questions. So, I've been like microdosing like throughout the day. So maybe like overall 300 to 400 milligrams a day, but like 100 at a time.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to get off. Well, I stopped taking fluoxetine, generic Prozac. Um, I feel like more, I don't know. I've been noticing like I'm feeling more. So I didn't realize how much maybe the Prozac was numbing.
Yep.
I don't, and I'm like, but also like going through that process of like, um, I don't know. I mean, like, I've read that like microdosing psilocybin can help get off, like ease some of the symptoms. But I do feel more sad. Maybe not sad. I don't know. I just like, I don't know. Does microdosing help with that? Am I maybe taking too much like throughout the day? How do I even know how much I really should be taking?
All good
I guess I have a
questions.
lot of questions
Yeah,
for
that's
the last
okay.
5 minutes.
That's okay. Thanks for the last 5 minutes. I will talk so fast. No, we can, I'll just say to the group really quick in honoring everybody's time. I know some of you are on East Coast time, some, in various time zones. So if you need to jump off, please feel free to. Again, appreciate everyone who's here and for being here. And for those of you that want to stay on, good night, Valerie. For those of you that want to stay on, then please feel free. I'll stay on and we'll continue the conversation as long as is helpful. I'm going to continue the recording right now because I do think this question is really helpful for others that might be listening in on this recorded session after the fact. Finding your dose is a very personal aspect to microdosing. And I love that you have been able to, again, kind of take that some of that curiosity and say, okay, I'm going to take it smaller doses throughout the day, see how it's helpful to me. Let me talk real quick about coming off of SSRIs and microdosing and where microdosing is helpful with that. One of the things that SSRIs do is it tells the body to stop producing serotonin in its natural rate. Because of the serotonin being held at the receptors, it's not being reuptaken. So the body, in its infinite wisdom, says, hey, clearly we have enough of this. I don't need to continue producing it anymore at the same level. So when you start to titrate off of those SSRIs or SNRIs, there is a serotonin deficiency gap that exists because that half-life of those medications is now no longer within the body, so it's not holding on to the serotonin within the system the way it was before. By microdosing first and finding that dose that's helpful to you, the psilocin attaches to that 5-HT2A serotonin receptor and elicits the same benefits of serotonin without touching natural serotonin production. So you can start titrating off the SSRI. That helps bridge some of that serotonin deficiency gap so you don't feel those withdrawal symptoms, the tiredness, the suicidal ideations, the irritability, a lot of that deeper sadness. Erica, I'm going to come back to what you mentioned about that and those feelings, but just those feelings that come down to almost a depressive state and a physical pain and physical response state that oftentimes sends us back to like, okay, well, forget that. That was a terrible plan. I'm just going to go back on the medication. So microdosing will help bridge those withdrawal symptoms so that the medication can be titrated off of. Now, also with microdosing, though, remember we are reducing blood flow to the amygdala. SSRIs and SNRIs increase blood flow to the amygdala. That's a lot of what can cause some of that flat affect or that robotic state or that numbing, like you talked about, is not having those regular emotional fluctuations. That's also part of what contributes to the sexual dysfunction or frustrations that often come alongside with the side effects of SSRIs and SNRIs. So now we're reducing the SSRI, so that's reducing blood flow to the amygdala, and using psilocybin, which also reduces blood flow to the amygdala. Well, what does the amygdala do? It moderates fight or flight, fear, and emotional responses. So it is entirely plausible that some of those emotions that are coming up, to your point, have always been there. They've just been numbed. But also, we put a definition to certain emotions that we're okay with and certain emotions we're not okay with. But they're just emotions, they're just physiological responses. So when we feel what we call happy or joyful or cheerful, we're like, oh, good. What do we say? I feel good. And then when we feel what we call sad or quiet or introspective or, a little bit isolationist, maybe, what do we say? Oh, I feel bad. So we've put our emotions into this black and white box of this feels good and this feels bad. So I want more of this and less of that. Instead of just saying, this is how my body's responding right now. This is an emotional response that I am having based off of probably a change in medications, different things that are going on in my life, busyness, all of those various things we're going to have. Did I eat today? What did I eat? Where's my hormone cycle? Did I sleep? All these things that play into how we emotionally feel on a daily basis, we cover a lot of that up. So kind of like Becky was talking about with defining where the fear is coming up from or why we're responding to certain things sometimes, we should be doing the same thing with all of the emotions that we have. Even when we're like, I feel amazing, I'm on top of the world. Okay, great. Appreciate that for the moment, but also what is going on that makes you feel so amazing and on top of the world right now? Because whatever that reference point is, I can 100% promise you there's an alternate reference point when you feel crappy and below the world and like the world is against you. So we don't want to give too much power to those physiological responses of how we feel at any given moment, because then we try and avoid certain things or move towards certain things instead of just noticing them and saying, okay, noticing that's interesting. Where might that be coming from? So those to kind of speak to the emotional response and the changes in coming off of an SSRI, I'll say those things. Now, finding the dose that's most helpful and what are you looking for? Microdosing is not about what we feel, to my point from the past 5 minutes. It is about what do we notice? Everything that we've talked about tonight. What am I noticing in my thinking? What am I noticing in my perspective? What am I noticing in how my body is physically responding to this? What am I noticing in my conversation? Being more open with others, maybe noticing nature in a different way. What am I noticing about my outlook on life? My thoughts. Those are all things that we are paying attention to and that are noteworthy when microdosing and finding that dose, because the goal is not to find a dose that makes us feel like we are now self-actualized beings and live in a state of utopia. That does not exist. When we first start something new, we will notice that physiological response of, oh, okay, I feel a little bit lighter. Like Tom had mentioned, a little more curious, a little more hopeful, optimistic. My brain is quieted down a little bit. Things feel a little bit lighter and easier. That's great. We call that good. But we're not trying to always stay in that place, because guess what? As that default mode network resets, that becomes our new norm. And for those of you that continue coming to group and following, this journey in a shared experience, you will note that at times people will jump on group and say, yeah, I've continued microdosing, but I don't think it's really working for me anymore. It's not really doing anything. And then through conversation across the next hours, we talk about how someone might have responded to something 6 months ago or a year ago when they started microdosing. They're like, oh yeah, actually, okay, yeah, it is working. I just have a new reset expectation because my baseline has shifted. I'm no longer coming from this depressive mental state or this highly anxious mental state or a clouded mental state. My baseline is different. So I'm not going to feel the same things all the time. Just like a new relationship, we're like, oh, you're so great. I love spending time with you. I feel so good when I'm with you. And then 30 years into marriage, we're like, really? You're still here. Okay, that's great. Which if my husband's listening tonight, I love our 30 years of marriage. You're amazing. But that is how we shift. We get used to things. The relationship now with the marriage and between us is far different. We appreciate different things about each other than we did when we were in our 20s and everything was just happy and amazing and the world was our oyster. So same thing with how we think. We think differently about things now than we did a year ago or 3 years ago or 10 years ago. And the same thing will happen with microdosing. Those feelings and those thought process will shift and that will become the new norm. And that's when you go into some of those deeper understandings of, wow, I really have a lot of definitions I need to break down. I've been holding on to a lot of things that I didn't realize were here. And as I gain different clarity and different perspective, I'm willing to step into some of those places that were like ball and chain tightly locked up in the attic of my brain, never to be touched, always to be held onto. It's becoming a little bit mushy up there now, Some of that's starting to leak out. I'm okay with that. So noticing things and how we respond initially is great, and we want to pay attention to that. But finding that dose that's most helpful is really about that longer journey. What am I noticing throughout the day? So if you're not using it for physical pain right now and you're using it more to titrate off of an SSRI or just to shift thinking, consider just dosing twice a day and leaving it at that. One dose in the morning. And if it's 100 milligrams, start with that 100 milligrams and then take another 100 milligrams, maybe around between 3 and 4, between 3 and 6 in the afternoon to early evening. And then see what you notice. And if you're like, I went through my day and that is doing nothing for me, then the next day take 200 milligrams in the morning or 150 milligrams in the morning and go about your day. And then see what you're noticing between 3 and 6 o'clock at night. And if you want to add in that additional dose. So pay attention to those things that are shifting and how you respond to others, where your brain is going, the things that you're doing, what you're focusing on, how your mind is functioning. Those are the shifts that we're looking for when we're determining what is our most helpful dose. Does that kind of give you some of the answer, and is that helpful, Erica?
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but like how long do people typically microdose coming off an SSRI
Yeah, so what I have found is
before there's a new normal? I guess. I mean, that's what I guess mean. I mean, I'm sure it might continue, but like, so it's like, okay, now you're kind of okay. Or like like leveled off.
I would say that's generally between 30 and 90 days. And so for individuals that are very aggressive in their titration, they're like, I just want off this stuff. they'll titrate in 30 days. I'm going to clarify because this is being recorded. I am not a prescribing medical clinician, so I am not personally titrating people. This is something that you discuss with your clinical provider that is providing that prescription for you. So I am not recommending a timeline. What I am saying is for the almost 1,000 individuals that I've worked with at this point in time that have shared with me what their journey has been, some people are wanting to just immediately come off of something and titrate as quickly as possible, and that can be about a 30-day time period. Others take longer to titrate, and that can be more of a 60 to 90-day time period. But generally, if we're talking about a singular medication or even a couple medications, maybe a Prozac and a Cymbalta, or two things that are kind of combined that would be doing similar things, about 90 days, I'd say would be average. Now, beyond that 90 days, your body is still resetting for a little bit. So, hopefully that's helpful in giving a little bit of guideline, but how long it takes to titrate ultimately is up to you. Listen to your body, pay attention to what you're noticing. There are certainly individuals who have tried to titrate really quickly and noticed that some very uncomfortable effects, and so they've gone back up a little bit and slowed down that titration process. You can also increase your microdose for a little while and then bring that back down once you've titrated off of the pharmaceuticals. So pay attention to your body and notice how it's affecting you with that titration process, and be willing to trust yourself through that.
One thing I just want to
Helpful.
share with her personally, like you just mentioned the state of sadness in regards to like when you get off of it. So I got off of citalopram and I cold turkeyed it. I don't recommend that for anyone, to be honest. It was tough. But I made a decision and there was extreme sadness. Eh, but it goes away. And for me, it went away. I can't speak to you or anyone else, but what happens, like all that serotonin you'd mentioned, those receptors, it sits there, your brain stops making serotonin. All of a sudden, you get off the drug, that's gone. Your brain doesn't know how to make serotonin, so you're not making the happy drug or whatever. This is all my opinion. But so now your brain is at a really low baseline of serotonin, so the sadness exists because you're naturally not producing it, and your brain takes time to start to reproduce that serotonin. So that's where I felt I've experienced sadness or the lows is because yeah, it did not exist. Like the chemical was not there.
Mhm.
So
How
for
how
me,
long did that last for you?
I mean, I'm like the extremeness was like probably like 2 or 3 weeks. It was pretty long. But I introduced microdosing like last week. I've only been on it like 9 days, and I'm not saying like I'm happy or there's joy but I'm saying there's a lot more clarity around it. Like I understand a little bit more
Mhm.
is the right way to put it.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you so much for sharing that. And I appreciate you noting that too, that it's not always about having that alternate state of feeling. It's not going from, this deep sadness to now I feel happy, happy, joy, joy. It's maybe I have fewer depressive symptoms.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah, that's
benefit of
great.
that.
That's great to put it that way because like I wouldn't say like I'm joyful or happy by any I'm working towards that. But it's like not there's no euphoria. Like it's not a grave difference. Like, but I do have like less sad moments.
Hmm. Yep. Erica, any other questions or kind of comments on that?
No, that was really helpful. Yeah, I know it's been weird. It's like I mean I know this stuff, but like coming off, I've been on it so long. And I'm not sad about like anything in particular, but I'm noticing that like I'm like, ooh, my mood feels like down, and then I'm like, oh crap. And I have had those moments where like maybe I should just go back on it. Like I'm like, it depends on how long it lasts because, I sit with people all day and I work with people and, I'm sure that they can tell like I'm, you know, not as joyful seeming as normal. Not because anything's like particularly wrong in my life, just like I don't know. That so that's why I just want some context of like, okay, so microdosing, as long as it's gonna last, because I see an end in sight. than the temptation to go back on fluoxetine. The reason I haven't gotten off all this time is because of this. I just haven't wanted to go through this process.
Yeah, because this
I
sucks.
didn't even know if I really needed it for a long time. I was just like, I just don't want to go off because I don't want to, like, never, this is never a good time. There's never a good time to get off fluoxetine or
Yep.
Prozac, you know,
Yep.
or SSRI.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the best time to come off of it, you're already in it. You know that if you try and titrate, if you go back up and then you titrate back down, at some point you're going to have to go right through this process again. So if you're in it, consider instead of taking the 100 milligram doses throughout the day, consider opening up one of those capsules. If you have the capsules, open up a capsule and tomorrow in your first dose, take 150 milligrams. So take one capsule plus half of another and see what you notice with that and see if there's some benefit with that for you. And then if you need to increase it, then the next day use the full 200 milligrams. Kind of play with that microdose and consider increasing that microdose a little bit because serotonin is our happy mood neurotransmitter. That is part of what it does, just like dopamine is that pleasure neurotransmitter. So serotonin is something that is important to the body for functioning in many, many regards, from digestion and sleep and lots of other things, and the brain connections and memory and moderating body temperature and all of that. But it is a happy mood. I'm calling, how we define a mood neurotransmitter. So it is something that we definitely want, and that attachment to that 5-HT2A serotonin receptor is incredibly helpful. The other thing with psilocybin is that it contributes to neuroplasticity too, which when we look at treatment-resistant depression, I know titrating off of fluoxetine and feeling some of those sad feelings is not the same as depression, but when we look at depression itself, just to touch on that, then that is more of a neuroplasticity issue than a serotonin issue. So that enhancement along the neuroplasticity side that psilocybin contributes to as well in the hippocampus is incredibly important and helpful for individuals coming off of the SSRIs or SNRIs for that mental state. So
Awesome. That's helpful. Sorry I have to jump off here, but thank you. That was super, super helpful.
No problem. No, thank you for the questions, and thank you all for staying on a little bit longer to finish that discussion. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording for those of you that are listening in. If you want to find out more about how to join these groups, jump on growyourownthoughts.org, and you can find dates, times, and Zoom links on our calendar on the website homepage.